What if there was a way to give horoscopes for your sign without getting into specific astrological information? Let me tell you, and let me be perfectly honest here. The majority of how I learned astrology and so how I accumulated a lot of my knowledge that I have about it was through, watching videos on YouTube, reading about it online, and also, the books that I have about it, and reading all those things I compiled all that information and I have it saved in what I call my mental files, in my mind. And, that's the truth. And you can certainly learn a lot of astrology through YouTube, through, articles online, etc. You can certainly do that. Um, if you want to learn it in a format like a course or something else, then you can certainly do that. But, you know, especially if you don't have a lot of money and you want to learn astrology and you want to spend your money for the things that you need, and that are perhaps more valuable to you, then that's probably how you learn, and that's probably how a lot of us um, learn new things in this day and age. And so, um, and it's a great way to learn in its own way. I'm not going to put learning astrology through YouTube below learning it through a course or consulting with a professional astrologer. We don't live in a zero sum game. We live in a world of nuance, multiplicity, diversity, and both and. So it's good in its own way. Um, and yeah, you can certainly learn astrology through YouTube. Especially there's this one channel, Stormy Grace, who has a YouTube astrology academy, where teachers, they get paid. I'm sure that they do, especially providing the amount of information that they're providing, and that quality of information. But you yourself don't have to pay to watch those videos. They're free courses, classes, lectures on. There's one that I was watching about the lunar notes, which was very, very well done, um, and very in depth. And, one of the best, descriptions of the lunar nodes that I've watched in the history of videos I've watched about it. So, yeah. So, if you're serious about becoming an astrologer, there's several ways of doing it. You can learn through courses. You can, get taught the language of astrology, or you're just self-taught. Now, I'm not an astrologer, but I know a lot about it, and I, um, I have, I enjoy making videos on it. So I would be more self-taught. Um, but so, yeah, and I think that it's important for me to be honest with you about how I, learn astrology and how I continue to learn astrology and how I engage with it. Um, and so, when it comes to watching so many videos about this, and I'm sure a lot of you know that many astrologers do what are called monthly horoscopes, where they break down sign by sign, this is what's happening, where they tell you, okay, this full moon is happening in your ninth house. This is what it means. Or Venus is moving into your seventh house. And so the focus is going to be on your relationships or your partner in marriage, etc. So, that's how they do it. And, for me personally, my personal opinion is I've never really been too interested in that because I'm always looking for it to absolutely resonate. And I find it very narrow and I'm not too interested. I'm more interested in the general information in the meaning of what this transit is about, what this full moon is about on a collective but individual level. On a collective but individual level. Where, there's a lot of depth and, substantial information for what that event means, for everyone, as opposed to your sign. And I don't do sun sign or rising sign forecast because it's not my area of expertise. That's not my forte. And it's not something that I think I can do very well and that I'm interested in doing. And, a little note about horoscopes. When you watch your monthly horoscope for your sign, for instance, watch for your rising sign and then your sun sign. I wouldn't go beyond those two placements in your natal chart because then, because those are general forecasts, you would need to consult with an astrologer to go more in depth and understand what is going on for you at a deeper level. So, what I wanted to do is I want to do something that is kind of original with maybe what I could do, and this is not a guarantee, this is not a promise, I may not end up doing this, but it is something that I'm considering thinking about, is what if I make a video about a full moon or new moon only, so no other, I won't do this in any other astrological videos, but just on the new moons, full moons, solar and lunar eclipses. What I'm planning on doing is talking about the meaning of the full moon or new moon, and then breaking it down sign by sign. And how is this full moon or new moon going to affect, and how does it apply? How is it relevant to your rising sign or your sun sign or both? And I'm going to do that not through the house system, without getting into jargon, without breaking it down. This is happening in your ninth house and then tying it in because that's, again, not my area of expertise. And so, I'm not going to break it down in that way, but I am going to, talk about the astrology and then go through each of the different signs. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. Ta-da! These are oracle cards, and this is just one of my decks. 2021. In astrology, that was the year when Saturn was squaring Uranus, Jupiter moved into Pisces and out of Aquarius, back and forth, and all the Mercury retrogrades happened in air signs, and the eclipses happened in Gemini and Sagittarius, save for one eclipse on November 19th, which was the lunar eclipse in Taurus. So in that year, in that summer, I ended up buying a lot of Oracle decks. And that was when I was into spiritual practices. That was when I was into Oracle cards. And this is just one of my decks. All of these decks, by the way, are by the spiritual teacher, Oracle card expert, and creator, Colette Baron Reid. And so from her variety of decks, I have Wisdom of the Oracle, Oracle of the Seven Energies, Spirit Animal, so Spirit Animal Oracle, the Wisdom of Avalon. I also have the Enchanted Map. And is there any in the Shaman's Dream too? I believe that those are all the decks that I have from her, so quite a few. Um, and so what I'm going to be doing is for each of the different signs, I'm going to pull a card, maybe one or two cards, or however many I feel like. And that way, you can get an understanding of how this full moon, what you need to know, and how can you approach the full moons and new moons based off of not house systems, not limited, simply predictive information that you don't have much control over, where you can't, first of all, actively do something. And for me personally, it just is not as meaningful for me, and it doesn't interest me. And it's like, okay, this is happening in my sixth house, of these things, and okay, whatever, it's probably not going to be a big deal. But with the oracle cards, not tarot cards, but oracle cards, you get more of a prescription rather than a prediction. So instead of oh, these events are going to happen, this is okay, this is what you might experience, or this is what you might feel, and this is something to think about, or something to do, or how to go about this, or what you need to know, or what you can do for the highest good for yourself and the highest good of all. So those are a couple of questions. So when you pull an oracle card from this deck, for example, if you see a card saying, oh, here and now, then it's about being present. It's about just not worrying about tomorrow, or the future, just being here and now and doing what you can in the moment, etc. So there's certainly also not dictatorial, and that's sort of the meaningful but not dictatorial part, where you don't have to live your life by the oracle cards, but they do provide spiritual guidance, wisdom, and meaning. That's how they should be used for guidance, and to add more meaning, to add possibly a sense of purpose, where you're sort of dialed into spirit, and you're connecting in that way, and possibly the house systems that astrologers use. This is happening in your sixth house, ninth house. Possibly that could be, there's limitations with that. I don't feel that there is as many limitations with the oracle cards. as there is with that. There's more to say, and it's not so tight and gridlocked onto that. This is happening in your 6th house or 7th house. It gives you, okay, well, this is something special for your sign. This is something unique and individual for your sign to think about. And here's the message. And this is again, a prescription, which has nothing to do with the houses of what something the full moon is going to fall in your chart. Instead, here's an oracle card, and this is what I have to say, and this is something to keep in mind, consider, something that you need to know about this event. So I am thinking of doing that. I really want to keep it simple, and not do too many oracle cards. I may just do cards for just your individual sign, or do a collective card. Who knows? But at this point, I don't want to overcomplicate and give you too much information from the oracle cards. But I want to keep it simple because less is more. And when I'm pulling oracle cards for a Venus transit or a Saturn transit and a full moon, it's just a lot. So I think that right now I'm just going to stick to pulling oracle cards for full moons and new moons and eclipses. Because, what about, why just Saturn transits? Why just Venus transits? So, it just makes a lot of sense. So, anyway, and plus the moon is our emotions of what we're feeling. It's the energy, the vibration, the mood, our mood for that given day, and it is, affects us perhaps the most out of any other planet in transit. So, yeah. So I'm thinking about that. And if you're an astrologer watching this, then I would definitely consider pulling oracle cards for astrological events, and for if you're going through certain forecasts for the different signs, to pull oracle cards. 1 or 2 or 3 for each sign. Again, I wouldn't overcomplicate it, but keep it simple. A couple cards for each sign, or one card for each sign, and then give the signs individual forecasts in that way. And I think a much more meaningful, spiritually meaningful, and substantial way. So that is what I have to say. And bye for now, everybody. That was just a little update.